Father James Verity and Norman Demek used to come to my parish for Sunday work, and they would invite us back to the monastery and at a vocation club. And so we would go there once a month, once every 2 months there. My brother had entered the Passionist seminary. He's 3 years older than me, so I went up and visited him. And I think what most drew me there was when I went up there, it was the friendship that existed among all the guys there. And to this day, I mean, a lot of those people are in our order. I think the biggest question we have in life is how to deal with pain and suffering. And we go through it in different ways throughout our lives, whether it's endings, sickness, infirmity, people die, hunger and poverty. And we need a way to deal with it. And I think for me, the Passionists that I have known and have taught me how to live made that a point that you didn't avoid pain and suffering. So it really became, you don't understand why you suffer, but what becomes important is who you suffer with. And I think that's the special thing about our men, is that Passionists are side by side with people who suffer, and they're not afraid to be with them in that difficulty. My happiest time as a Passionist was when I returned to Honduras, and I lived in Casa Passionista. I went back there after being pastor in Brooklyn for 7 years, and what made it special was I was living with people and formed a community with people who were living with AIDS, and they taught me more about life and about God than anybody else. The way that they would take care of one another. When I was there, a number of times people died. We had people come into the house to be with us. And I can remember one time, just a young woman, about 23, died. And there was a man in his early 60s, and he refused to leave the room after she had died until somebody from her family was there. And he spent a vigil there. And then when people did die, they would bathe them. There would be times we would put fingernail polish on their hands. The women would want to be pretty, as they were leaving this world, and the care and love that they shared with one another. And I guess to me, like, I can remember I would be helping out in the parish in Talanga, and when I would come home at night, 9 o'clock, 9:30, they would get out of bed, and they would come and sit with me and ask me what I had done that day. And to think that people would do this, they made you feel that you were special, and I was happy because they were ministering to me rather than me ministering to them. Well, since I've been named a bishop, I have gone through a whole array of emotions. When it first happened, I was overwhelmed, and I was shocked, and I was embarrassed. I mean, there was like a big fuss being made, and I didn't understand why, and I couldn't figure out why they had done this. Other days, I'm really afraid. This is my whole life as I know it is going to be different, so I become very fearful. But I guess what I'm most excited about now at the present time is I am about. I kind of think of when Nicodemus went to Jesus and he said, "Unless you're born from above and born again." And I think I'll be going to Jamaica, and I'm going to have to be born again. They're going to teach me what life is about. They're going to teach me about God. And so there's a whole new thing that I'm going to have to learn. But I also know that I've done this before with Hispanic cultures, and I do have gifts to share. So I just see, I really find it interesting that, I'm starting life all over again. First of all, we've been in Jamaica, West Indies, for over 50 years. I went to Jamaica before I was ordained and fell in love with the island. I think a great part of who I am is I'm a product of the Passionist community. So I am actually bringing the Passionist community to Jamaica, and I've learned since being in Honduras and all my assignments that it's not the locale of where you're living, it's the depth of your relationship with people. And I think this is good for the Passionists. I think when we're talking about a shortage of vocations and people getting older, we are excited about going to other people and being with them. So I only think it deepens my relationship with the Passionists and the Passionist relationship with the Diocese of Mandeville. My whole family is from Brooklyn. And when my mother and father used to date at Prospect Park, my mother would show me the gazebo that they would go out and they dated at. And so, but when my father and mother married, they moved out to Long Island. My father was a laundryman. And so they were everybody was moving out to Long Island at the time, but all my family was in Brooklyn. So our vacations were to stay with my mother's twin sister, my aunt, in Brooklyn. And the special thing I had is I became pastor of visitation in Red Hook. And when we found out, my mother says, that's Grandma's parish. So I became the pastor of a parish where my grandmother was married to my grandfather, who was baptized in visitation, and my great-grandmother was married there. So all my roots are from Brooklyn. You can probably tell by the way I talk that I'm from Brooklyn, but I grew up on Long Island. And I went to our seminary when I was a freshman in high school. So it's, 40 years that I've been with the Passionists. So they are my family, and it was from the men in the monastery. Lucian Clark, who just celebrated 50 years of profession, I was in his vocation group. So I mean, the bonds go on for a long time, but it all started there on Long Island. I called up my mother to tell her I was a bishop on Tuesday morning, and she just couldn't believe it. But she said, "I always told you you'd make something of yourself." But as I did talk to her, she said, "I remember when you were just a boy, and we sat on the living room floor, and we went through brochures about seminaries." And she says, "I'll never forget, how you would go through there and you picked it out." So this has been a long process.